Visualize yourself participating in an instant where invisible forces, stronger than the wind or the sea, are in conflict before your eyes. A battle between good and evil in which the boundaries of the natural and the supernatural merge. This narrative takes us beyond the ordinary. It takes us to a singular event in the life of Jesus Christ, an instant in which he confronts the dominion of darkness in a devastating way. But after all, why did the demons ask to be sent to the pigs? What is the purpose of this unusual request? These details may seem insignificant or enigmatic at first. However, as we delve deeper into the context of this meeting, we discover a deeper and more disturbing level of meaning. Today, we're going to unravel what was at stake when these demons asked not to be thrown into the abyss, but to live among a herd of pigs. Now reflect for a moment. What does Jesus' battle with these demons symbolize? Why is this seemingly simple conquest so important? And even more crucially, what does it reveal to us about Christ's victory over evil? To understand this situation more deeply, we need to go back in time and look at the context. In chapter 8 of Matthew's Gospel, verses 28 to 34, Jesus and his followers had just crossed the Sea of Galilee. They had witnessed the tranquility of a storm with just one command from the Master, a clear indication that Jesus had mastery not only over nature, but also over chaos. When they reached the other shore, in the area of the Gerasenes, two people overcome by demons left their tombs in order to find him. Mark's account in chapter 5 gives an even more detailed description of one of these individuals. He dwelt among the tombs, broke chains with unimaginable force, screamed endlessly, and hurt himself with stones. It is crucial to understand that at that time, tombs were commonly seen as places of impurity and refuge for evil entities. The gloomy setting of the scene was only intensified by the presence of these men in the tombs, violent and terrifying. No one dared to pass by, given the fear these individuals caused. In many ways, they were slaves of Satan, subjugated by forces beyond their comprehension or control. When they see Jesus, something surprising happens. These men, or rather the demons that dwell within them, immediately identify him. "What is your purpose, Son of God?" they exclaim. The identification of Jesus as the Son of God, coming from demonic entities, presents a disturbing contrast. While many of those around Jesus did not yet fully understand his identity, the demons already had a clear understanding of who they were. Here the crucial question arises: why do they ask to be sent to the pigs? The gospel tells us that, far away, there was a large herd of pigs grazing. The demons, aware that Jesus would expel them from the men, begged not to be thrown into the abyss, an expression commonly related to the place of imprisonment or final torment for evil spirits. Instead, they asked to be thrown to the pigs, and Jesus, in a surprising way, granted their request. He authorizes them to enter the pigs. However, this permission does not come without consequences. Shortly after the demons enter the animals, the herd of around 2,000 pigs goes berserk and falls off the cliff into the ocean, where they all drown. The repercussions of this event were instantaneous. Those responsible for the pigs fled, frightened to report what had happened both in the city and in the countryside. When they arrived to see for themselves, the local residents were confronted with an impressive scene. The man previously subdued by demons was now sitting up, properly dressed, and in full mental health. However, this is not the end of the story. Instead of celebrating the liberation of the oppressed men, the townspeople asked Jesus to stay away from their area. What prompts this seemingly ungrateful attitude? The reason could be the financial loss they had suffered as a result of the death of the pigs. It was a herd of high financial value, and the damage certainly provoked fear and revolt. This event makes us ponder some relevant questions. Firstly, why did Jesus allow demons to enter the pigs? The most obvious answer may be that this served to clearly highlight the evil power that dominated these individuals. When the crowd rushes into the abyss and drowns, everyone realizes that those destructive forces were real and devastating. The fact that Jesus allowed demons to enter unclean animals, such as pigs, seen as unclean by Jewish tradition, also seems symbolically appropriate. However, there is a second aspect to take into account: the response of the townspeople. Instead of celebrating the liberation of the possessed men, They prefer to focus on the loss of material goods. This attitude exposes a universal issue: the inclination to prioritize the material over the spiritual. They opt for the stability of their economy rather than allowing the divine force to act in their existence. This same pattern manifests itself in several other biblical accounts, where individuals reject the divine invitation in favor of their personal interests. Jesus, who had displayed dominion over natural and spiritual forces, now faces rejection not because of his actions, but because of people's attachment to what is material. In this context, resistance to him is not driven by religious or theological issues, but by the fear of losing comfort and financial stability. How are we doing? How often do we choose to preserve our herd of pigs instead of letting God invade our lives and change everything? The fear of transformation, the fear of losing what we know, often prevents us from experiencing God's transforming power. This narrative shows us that Jesus has the ability to free not only those who suffer physical oppression, but also us from our spiritual oppressions. The story of this exorcism is not limited to a single episode of spiritual power. It symbolizes Jesus' ministry among the pagans, bringing liberation and redemption to all, without distinction of origin or condition. Jesus' performance of this miracle in a predominantly Gentile area, and not among the Jews, suggests that God's redemption is not restricted to a particular population. It is global. So we come to the main dilemma of this story. What are we ready to give up to follow Christ? Are we ready to abandon our herds of pigs, things that provide us with momentary security, in order to experience the freedom and tranquility that he provides? Or, like the townspeople, do we beg him to leave when his presence threatens to shake our comfort zones? Our call is clear. Jesus didn't come to leave us in our current situation. He came to change us, set us free, and give us a new existence. However, this change requires a decision to abandon what imprisons us and open ourselves up to what God has in store. However, a crucial question arises. Are you willing to give up your pig colonies and allow Jesus to work in your life? Now that we understand the context in which Jesus confronts the demons and the impactful scene of the pigs, a new question arises. Why did the demons, aware of Jesus' strength, not hide or resist? Why, even though they were aware of his authority, did they ask to be assigned to unclean animals like pigs? These questions make us think more deeply about what was really at stake at that moment. Ultimately, what does this scene tell us about Jesus' spiritual kingdom and authority? First of all, let's reflect on the attitude of the demons. When Jesus arrives, they make no effort to resist. They know who he is and bow before him, begging not to be annihilated before their time. This gives us a crucial indication. The demons have a clear understanding of the fate that awaits them. They are aware that there is a final judgment awaiting them, a moment when they will be totally defeated and thrown into the abyss. This understanding terrifies them, but at the same time it reveals something relevant about Christ's authority. Here there is no direct confrontation, no fight of equals. Jesus commands and they comply. The demons recognize Jesus as the Messiah, and this affirmation, even though it comes from evil entities, confirms a truth that was still being assimilated by the disciples and the large number of people who follow Jesus. Jesus' authority was not restricted to humans or the material universe. He had dominion over the entire spiritual universe, including the fallen angels, who were aware of this and feared what was to come. Why the pigs? This unique request may seem bizarre, but it has significant symbolism. The demons asked to be sent to a herd of pigs, animals seen by the Jews as unclean. Jesus allows this, but there are clear reasons for this choice. Firstly, the selection of pigs accentuates the impurity of these spirits. The spiritual impurity of the demons finds a temporary shelter in beings that, for the Jews, were also seen as impure. Furthermore, when the demons invade the pigs, a remarkable event occurs. The animals completely lose their bearings and plunge off a cliff into the ocean. This shows the real destructive capacity of demons. Their aim is not only to possess, but also to destroy. When they penetrate individuals, they cause pain, anguish, and degradation. And now with the pigs, they proceed in the same way, resulting in the immediate annihilation of the herd. This annihilation of the pigs also serves to clearly demonstrate the emancipation of the two individuals. Those who knew these men were aware of their suffering. When they watch the herd plunge into the ocean, they have concrete, tangible evidence that something remarkable has happened. Human beings had freed themselves from a destructive force, something that everyone could observe and identify. And another question arises. Why do the townspeople, instead of celebrating their liberation, ask Jesus to go away? Is it only because of the loss of material goods, or is there something deeper behind this response? The testimony indicates that the townspeople were frightened. They saw something beyond their comprehension, something they couldn't control or explain. Although they had heard about Jesus' ability to heal and work miracles, witnessing his exposure to invisible spiritual forces was far more terrifying. They chose the protection of what they already knew, even if it meant living with possessed and violent men, rather than face the reality that divine power was present among them. This kind of behavior is not uncommon. People often opt for the comfort of their lives, even in the face of their problems, rather than relinquishing control and allowing God to intervene in their circumstances. The presence of Jesus symbolizes transformation, and transformation often causes discomfort. Even when it comes to freedom, there is a price to be paid. In the case of the Gadarenes, the loss of the pigs was a cost they were not prepared to bear. Fear of the unknown, together with attachment to material goods, prevented them from seeing the true blessing they possessed. Jesus, the Son of God, was present, offering something far more valuable than material possessions. However, they refused this proposal, asking him to leave their area. This leads us to reflect. How often do we deny God's presence in our lives for fear of losing what we value? What are the pigs that we trap ourselves in, preventing us from enjoying something infinitely superior? So, at the end of this encounter, Jesus accepts the villager's request and leaves. However, before he leaves, something important happens. One of the freedmen asks to go with Jesus. He longs to be at his Savior's side and become one of his followers. However, to the amazement of many, Jesus sends him back to his home and family, saying, "Tell us what the Lord has done for you and how he has shown compassion to you." This is a fundamental point. Jesus was aware that, despite the human desire to follow him physically, his mission was different. He would serve as a concrete demonstration of Christ's transforming power among his own countrymen. Man now had a new existence, a new goal, and part of that goal was to spread the word about what God had done for him. This shows us that, often, the place where we are called to serve is not far away, but close by, among those who know us and can witness the change that God has made in our lives. Furthermore, Jesus' return to his homeland shows that the gospel, the message of redemption, was not limited to a particular group of individuals. Christ's purpose went beyond cultural and religious barriers. He came for everyone. And this emancipation among the pagans was a prelude to what was to come, the expansion of God's kingdom beyond Israel's borders. We come to a crucial question. What does this narrative reveal to us about the future of God's kingdom? Jesus' encounter with the Gadarenes indicates a future in which the gospel will have no barriers to its spread. Jesus' work among the Gentiles, albeit on a small scale, anticipates what will happen after his resurrection, when his followers will spread the message of redemption to all nations. This liberated man would become one of the first to proclaim the transforming power of Christ in a land that did not know God. His testimony would serve as a beacon of hope for a people who had initially rejected Jesus. Therefore, we can infer that the narrative of the Gadarenes goes beyond a mere account of an exorcism. It presents us with profound truths about Jesus' strength against evil, the human capacity to resist transformation, and the global scope of redemption. However, there is still vast potential to be explored. What is the role of each individual in this vast plan of redemption? How can we live according to this freedom that Jesus gives us, without letting fear or attachment to material things prevent us from experiencing all that he has in store for us? We have reached a stage where we need to ponder deeply what this narrative can teach us about our own existences. Once again, Jesus demonstrated his undeniable power over the forces of evil. He freed men who were imprisoned by something far greater than they could manage. Even in the face of such liberation, those who witnessed the miracle reacted with fear and rejection, choosing to preserve what they already knew rather than surrender to the drastic transformation that Jesus proposed. The question that remains is, How does this relate to us? The reality is that we often behave like the inhabitants of that town. We cling to what seems safe, even if it keeps us in a condition of spiritual constraint. It could be customs, behaviors, or even the wrong choices we make in our existence. We may not have a herd of pigs to keep, but there are aspects that make us hesitate when God invites us to a life of change and liberation. The fear of losing what we know, the fear of handing over the reins to Him, prevents us from experiencing the full power and love that Jesus gives us. When we examine the story of the Gadarenes with sincerity, we realize that their real issue wasn't the loss of the pigs. It was their fear of the unexplored. Jesus' presence there symbolized a break with what they knew, and often the fear of the unknown prevails over the longing for transformation. How often do we choose to hold on to what is familiar, even if it makes us uncomfortable, rather than giving it up and allowing God to do something new in our lives? This narrative invites us to ponder our own herds of pigs, things that we keep so carefully, but which ultimately prevent us from fully experiencing what God has in store for us. However, as well as setting those men free, Jesus teaches us something even more significant. He invites us to share what He has done for us. The freed man wanted to follow Jesus, to walk alongside Him, but his mission was different. He was called to return to his home, his family, his community, and share the wonders that God had done. This provides us with a valuable lesson. Often, the most impactful witness we can offer is right where we are. We can aim for radical transformations, new perspectives, but God calls us to be a light where we are already established. His goal for us may be precisely to influence those who know us and who can clearly see the change that Jesus has brought about in our lives. This invitation to bear witness is not restricted to our own liberation. It points to something much broader, the global reach of the gospel. The liberated individual was the pioneer in spreading the message of Christ in his area. He acted as a kind of forerunner of what the disciples would later accomplish when Jesus appointed them to preach to all nations. This reminds us that Jesus' message knows no geographical boundaries. It is universal, no matter where we are, where we come from, or what our background is. God's love is universal, and we are called to manifest this truth through our words and attitudes. Now, after pondering all this, a new question arises. How are we responding to the call we have been given? Jesus gives us the same freedom that He gave to oppressed men. We may not have our prisons as obvious as theirs, but we all fight spiritual battles. When we are set free, when we experience divine grace and power, we are called to share it with others. We cannot keep this change to ourselves. Just like the man who returned home, we are called to be a light to the world. The conclusion of this narrative goes beyond the mere liberation of two individuals. It unveils the heart of Jesus, His desire to set us free, but also to use us to make an impact on others. Although the world occasionally despises Christ's message, this does not imply that we should stop spreading what He has done for us. Initially, the community rejected the freed man, asking Jesus to leave. However, he remained resolute in his testimony, and this is something we should also practice. When we look at Jesus' ministry and His constant movement towards those most in need, liberating, healing, and changing lives, we see the model we should follow. We are called to act as agents of change, to live in such a way that our existence reflects divine love. However, it all starts with the decision to allow Jesus to set us totally free, to abandon our herd of pigs and believe that He has something much more valuable for us. Now, as we reflect on the application of this story to our lives, a final question urges us. What are we willing to give up in order to follow Jesus? What are we holding back, afraid of losing, that prevents us from enjoying the full life that He gives us? The change that Christ brings is not simple. It often requires giving up and the courage to face the unknown. However, the reward is always far greater. Just like the men who were freed, we also have the opportunity to experience a new existence, free from the bonds that imprison us. The question is, are we prepared to abandon what prevents us from fully following Christ? This narrative motivates us to put our trust in Jesus and to believe that His authority surpasses any power that could subjugate us. Regardless of our condition, He has the ability to change us and give us a new existence. Like the man who was set free, we are called to share this with the world. Finally, I would like to leave an invitation for you who have followed us this far. If this message has touched your heart, if you feel that something in your life needs to be handed over to Jesus, do it immediately. Don't let fear or fixation on earthly things stop you from experiencing the freedom and tranquility that He brings. At the end of this video, if you identified with this message, don't forget to give it a like, share it with those you love, and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving materials that will enrich your life. I wish you and your family God's blessings.